Look, I have to tell somebody about this. I just have to get it out, because this whole mess at work is eating me alive, and I honestly feel like I'm losing my mind. My name is Sloan. I'm 26, and I've been working at this marketing firm for 3 years. It was fine, you know? A good job. The people were nice, the work was challenging enough, and I had my little circle, my friends. Everything was stable. And then they hired Alistair. He started about a year ago. On paper, he was perfect. 29 years old, great resume, seemed totally normal during his interview, or so I heard. But from the very first day he walked into our open plan office, something was off. Seriously, deeply off. The first few weeks, we all did our part to be welcoming. That's just who we are. Me, and Phoebe, who sits across the aisle, and Tessa in the cubicle next to mine, we're a team. We made a real effort. We invited him to our daily coffee run, asked him to join our lunch group, made small talk about his weekend. You know, normal, human things you do to make someone feel like they belong. But Alistair, he was like a wall. A polite, smiling concrete wall. I remember the first time I tried. He was making coffee in the break room. I walked in and smiled. "Hey, Alistair, settling in okay?" He glanced at me, just for a second. "Yes, thank you." And then he turned back to the coffee machine, as if I'd just vanished into thin air. The finality of it was jarring. Okay, maybe he's just shy, I thought. New job jitters. We all get them. So Tessa tried. She's the friendliest person I know, an absolute ray of sunshine. She saw him looking at a photo on his desk and went over. "Oh, is that your family?" she asked, her voice full of genuine warmth. He gave a clipped nod. Yes. He didn't elaborate. He didn't offer a story. He just picked up his mug and walked back to his desk, leaving Tessa standing there looking completely bewildered. But the real kicker, the thing that started the little alarm bells ringing in my head, was watching him with the guys. With Garrett and Reed from the finance team, he was a completely different person. He'd laugh this big, booming laugh. He'd lean back in his chair and talk about football for 20 minutes. He'd joke around, share stories, ask them about their lives. He was normal. He was the person we thought we were hiring. But that person only existed for the men in the office. For us, for me, for Phoebe, for Tessa, for every other woman who tried to engage with him, he was a ghost. We got polite nods. We got one-word answers. We got the absolute bare minimum of professional courtesy, and nothing more. It was bizarre. And honestly, it was starting to feel personal. I remember telling Phoebe about it over lunch one day, after Alistair had flat out ignored her question about a new movie. "It's like we're invisible to him," I said, poking at my salad. Phoebe sighed, frustrated. "I know. At first I thought I'd done something to offend him. But he's like that with all of us. Did you see him with Reed this morning? Chatting away like they were old war buddies." We just sat there for a moment, confused. It didn't make any sense. We weren't just being sensitive, it was real. It was a deliberate choice he was making, every single day. He was choosing to ice out half of the office. And I just couldn't shake the question that was starting to form in my mind. Why? The next few months were strange. The office became this weird social experiment that only the women were aware of. The guys, Garrett and Reed and the others, they all loved Alistair. They thought he was a great guy. And why wouldn't they? He gave them his entire personality. We just got the leftovers. My initial confusion started curdling into real frustration. It wasn't just that he was quiet. It was a clear, undeniable pattern of exclusion. And I started to notice every single instance. It was impossible not to. The breaking point for my patience came on a Tuesday. Phoebe came into work looking completely stressed out. Her car had broken down on the highway, and she was explaining the whole ordeal, worried about the repair costs. Alistair was standing not 5 feet away, refilling his water bottle. He heard every word. He didn't even flinch. "No, oh, that's tough." Or, "Hope you get it sorted out." Nothing. He just walked away. Later that same day. I swear, you can't make this stuff up. Garrett mentioned his car was making a weird rattling noise. Alistair's head popped up over his monitor. Oh, really? What kind of sound? Is it a high-pitched squeal or more of a low grumble? He spent the next 20 minutes giving Garrett detailed advice, recommending mechanics, even offering to take a look at it himself in the parking lot. I watched the entire exchange, my mouth just hanging open. Phoebe caught my eye from across the room, and her expression was a mixture of hurt and disbelief. It was so blatant, so insulting. Her crisis was invisible to him, but Garrett's minor inconvenience was a fascinating problem to be solved. The lunch situation became a running joke between me, Tessa, and Phoebe, but it wasn't a funny one. Tessa, bless her heart, tried inviting him at least 5 more times. Each time, he had a polite excuse. Thanks, Tessa, but I have other plans. Appreciate the offer, but I have to run some errands. But then we'd see him, sometimes eating alone at his desk, which was weird enough. But more often than not, we'd see him walking out the door with Reed and Garrett, laughing on their way to the sandwich shop down the street. He had plans, all right. They just never, ever included us. His entire demeanor was a performance with 2 different scripts. With the guys, he was relaxed, funny, open. He'd use slang, complain about his landlord, talk about dates he'd been on. He was a person. With us, it was like talking to a customer service robot. Everything was, yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Understood, Sloane. I will get that to you shortly, Phoebe. The formality was chilling. It created this invisible barrier in every single conversation, making every interaction feel stilted and awkward. Phoebe was the one who pointed out the questioning pattern. Have you noticed, she said one afternoon, that he has never once asked any of us a personal question? Not one. She was right. He knew all about Garrett's kids, Reed's golf handicap, our supervisor's fishing trips. But he knew nothing about us beyond our job titles. He never asked about our weekends, our hobbies, our families. It was like he fundamentally did not see us as people worth getting to know. We were just female coworkers, functional objects in his professional landscape. We all talked about it constantly. It was just so bizarre that we couldn't let it go. We weren't trying to be his best friends. We were just trying to have a normal, pleasant work environment. But his behavior was creating this strange divide in the office, a subtle but deeply uncomfortable rift where the men were in the club and the women were on the outside looking in. And it was really starting to get under my skin. It felt wrong. It felt discriminatory, and I was getting tired of pretending it was okay. I'm not proud of what I did next. I'm really not. But I felt like I was being gaslit by an entire office. The men saw nothing wrong, and the women felt like we were going crazy. I needed proof. I needed to know, for my own sanity, that I wasn't just imagining things. So, I became an investigator, a reluctant one, but a determined one. My first stop was the internet, social media. I felt a little creepy doing it, but I had to know if this was just who he was, an antisocial guy who was only comfortable around other men. I typed Alistair Vance into the search bar. His profiles were public, and what I saw made my stomach drop. It wasn't him. I mean, it was him, but it was a version of him I had never seen. There were pictures of him at parties, arm in arm with a mixed group of friends, men and women, all laughing. There were photos from hiking trips, beach outings, birthday dinners, with women right there next to him, smiling. So, he was capable of it. He was perfectly capable of normal, friendly, social interaction with women. He just chose not to, from 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. That discovery lit a fire in me. This wasn't some social awkwardness. This was a deliberate, conscious choice he was making in our workplace. And that felt 10 times more insulting. I started writing things down. I got a small black notebook, and I kept it in my desk drawer. It felt dramatic, but I needed the facts in black and white. October 14th, 9:15 a.m. Alistair spent 12 minutes talking to Reed about the new Blade Runner movie. When I tried to join the conversation, saying I loved the original, he nodded, said, "It's a classic," and immediately turned back to Reed. October 19th, 2:30 p.m. Tessa was struggling to carry a heavy box of printer paper. Alistair walked right past her. Didn't offer to help. 10 minutes later, I watched him practically jump out of his chair to help Garrett move his monitor. October 25th, 11 a.m., he brought in donuts. Left them on the communal table in the finance corner near Garrett and Reed's desks. He told them, "Hey guys, help yourselves." He never mentioned it to anyone on our side of the office. I shared my findings with Phoebe and Tessa. At first, they were a little hesitant about the notebook, but when they saw the list of incidents, they got on board. It was validating for them, too. They started adding their own observations. We realized he was in a group chat with all the guys, where they planned happy hours and shared memes. We were, of course, not included. He was actively, systematically building a social world within our office that explicitly excluded every single female employee. My little investigation escalated. I started timing my coffee breaks to coincide with his, just to watch him. I'd sit at a table in the break room with my laptop, pretending to work, but I was just observing. I saw him spend 45 minutes, an entire lunch break, helping Garrett troubleshoot a problem with his laptop. They were joking and relaxed the whole time. But when I asked him a simple, work-related question about a project we were both on, I got a 2-sentence email in response. Not even a conversation. An email. The evidence was piling up, entry by entry, in my little black book. It was clear, it was consistent, and it was deeply, fundamentally wrong. This wasn't just him being unfriendly. This was discrimination. And I was starting to feel like I had to do something about it. The final straw. The one that made me say, "Okay, that's it, we're doing something," was so public, so humiliating, that there was no turning back. Our department had just landed a huge new client after a month of grueling work. To celebrate, Garrett and Reed decided to organize a big team lunch at a nice Italian place downtown. They sent out a group email to everyone. Everyone. They walked around the office to get a verbal head count. When they got to Alistair's desk, I was watching. "Hey Alistair, team lunch on Friday to celebrate the win. You in?" Garrett asked. Alistair's face lit up. "Absolutely. I've been wanting to try that place for months. Count me in." He and Garrett started chatting about the menu. A few minutes later, the conversation shifted to logistics. Tessa, trying to be helpful, chimed in. "Okay, so if we're going at 1, I'll just need to move my afternoon meeting. What about everyone else?" And I watched it happen. I saw the switch flip behind Alistair's eyes. The moment a woman became part of the planning, the walls went up. His smile vanished. He cleared his throat and said, loud enough for several of us to hear, "You know what, guys? I just remembered I have another commitment on Friday. I'm so sorry, I can't make it after all." The silence was deafening. It was so obvious, so painfully, insultingly obvious. He was happy to go to lunch with the team, as long as the team only consisted of men. The second it became clear that women would also be attending, he was out. Garrett and Reed just looked confused, but they shrugged it off. But me, Phoebe, and Tessa, we all looked at each other. The humiliation was a physical thing. It felt like a slap in the face. That was it. I was done. Done being patient. Done giving him the benefit of the doubt. Done trying to understand. That afternoon I walked over to their desks. "My office, now," I said, my voice low and shaking with anger. We huddled in my cubicle. "He's not going to get away with this," I said. "He can't. This is a hostile work environment. He is deliberately creating a discriminatory atmosphere, and I'm not going to stand for it anymore." Tessa nodded, her eyes watery. "It was so embarrassing, Sloan. Anissa prate." Phoebe was just furious. "We have to go to HR. We have to." So we did. I scheduled a meeting with the head of human resources, a woman named Miss Vance. I brought my little black notebook, now filled with dates, times, and specific, undeniable examples of Alistair's differential treatment. We sat in her sterile, quiet office, and we told her everything, from the one-word answers to the car incident to the humiliating lunch refusal. I explained how it was affecting our morale, how it made us feel undervalued and unwelcome in our own workplace. Miss Vance listened intently. She took notes. She asked clarifying questions. She seemed professional, concerned, and empathetic. When I showed her my documentation, her expression became very serious. "Thank you for bringing this to my attention, Sloane, Phoebe, Tessa," she said, her voice calm and reassuring. "The company takes allegations of discrimination very seriously. Creating different standards of treatment for employees based on gender is against our policy. I want to assure you that we will conduct a full and thorough investigation." Walking out of that meeting, I felt a huge sense of relief. It was like a massive weight had been lifted off my chest. Finally, someone in a position of authority was taking us seriously. We had done the right thing. Justice was coming. I was so naive. A week later, I got an email from Miss Vance. "Sloane, could you please come to my office at 3 p.m. for a follow-up discussion? Thank you." This was it. I felt a surge of vindication. This was the meeting where she would tell us what actions were being taken, what consequences Alistair would face. I walked to her office with my head held high, feeling empowered. I knocked on the door. "Come in," she said. I stepped inside. The atmosphere was different. The warmth from our first meeting was gone. Miss Vance sat behind her large desk, her expression unreadable, almost clinical. "Sloane, please, have a seat," she said, gesturing to the chair. I sat down, my confidence starting to waver. My stomach felt tight. "We have completed our investigation into the concerns you, Phoebe, and Tessa raised regarding Alistair Vance," she began, her voice formal. "We spoke with Alistair, as well as several other employees in your department." I nodded, waiting for the "and as a result" and part. It never came. Instead, she said, "Alistair provided us with some context for his behavior that I feel is important to share with you." I felt a cold dread creep up my spine. This was not going the way I had imagined. "Apparently," she continued, looking down at her notes, at his previous place of employment, Alistair was the subject of a harassment accusation from a female coworker. He states that their relationship was, in his view, a casual workplace friendship, but she misinterpreted his friendliness as romantic interest. When he did not reciprocate, she filed a formal complaint. He says the accusation was false, but the investigation was a deeply traumatic experience that nearly cost him his career and his reputation. I just stared at her, completely stunned. I couldn't form words. "As a result, Miss Vance went on, Alistair explained that he has adopted a strict policy for himself. He calls it a professional courtesy-only policy when interacting with female colleagues. He keeps conversations strictly work-related and avoids non-essential social interactions to protect himself from any possible future misunderstandings. He maintains that it is not personal, but a professional boundary he has set for his own protection." I finally found my voice, though it came out as a shocked whisper. "So, that's it? That's his excuse? A past experience gives him the right to treat all women like they're a threat? That's still creating a hostile environment for us." Miss Vance looked at me, and for the first time her expression held a hint of something that looked like pity. "Sloane, an employee has the right to set professional boundaries. While his approach may seem unfriendly, it does not technically violate company policy." My head was spinning, but the worst part was yet to come. "Furthermore," she said, her tone shifting, becoming even more serious. "During our investigation, several other employees came forward. Garrett, Reed, and even your supervisor confirmed that Alistair had shared this past experience with them. They understood his position and supported his decision to keep interactions with female colleagues strictly professional." Betrayal. It was a sharp, physical pain in my chest. They knew. They knew and they thought it was reasonable. And then she dropped the bomb, the one that shattered my entire reality. The investigation also brought another issue to light, she said, looking me directly in the eye. Several employees, both male and female, expressed discomfort with the way you, Phoebe, and Tessa had been handling the situation. My blood ran cold. What are you talking about? They reported feeling awkward. They noticed you timing your breaks to observe Alistair. They were aware that you were documenting his every move and constantly discussing him amongst yourselves. Some described your behavior as obsessive. A few people complained that you were the ones creating workplace drama and that it was making them uncomfortable. I couldn't breathe. Sloane, she said, her voice now firm and official, systematically monitoring a coworker, documenting their social interactions, and creating a hostile atmosphere through constant discussion, can itself constitute workplace harassment under our company policy. I just sat there, frozen in my chair, the world tilting on its axis. Somehow, in the space of 1 week, I had gone from being the victim to being the accused. The meeting ended with Miss Vance informing me that no action would be taken against Alistair. His behavior, she reiterated, was a legally defensible boundary. But action would be taken against us. Me, Phoebe, and Tessa were required to attend mandatory sensitivity training about appropriate workplace behavior and professional boundaries. It was the most humiliating experience of my life. We sat in a small, windowless room with an HR facilitator, being lectured about respect and privacy in the workplace, knowing that everyone in the office knew why we were there. And they did know. I don't know who leaked the details, but within a week, the story was everywhere. The narrative, however, had been twisted. The office gossip wasn't about Alistair's weird behavior. It was about the 3 crazy women who got obsessed with the new guy and harassed him until HR had to step in. The shift was immediate and brutal. Conversations would stop when I walked into the break room. People who used to smile at me would now give me a tight, awkward nod and look away. I was toxic. I was the office drama queen. Worse, I watched as people went out of their way to be nice to Alistair. They'd invite him for coffee, ask about his weekend extra loudly when I was nearby. It was a performance, a way of showing their allegiance. They were proving what a reasonable guy he was and what unreasonable hysterics we were. He was the victim who needed protecting from me. The unraveling didn't stop there. It seeped into my friendships, poisoning the very alliance that had started this whole thing. Tessa was the first to break. She pulled me aside one day, her face pale and her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and resentment. "Sloane, I can't do this anymore," she whispered, wringing her hands. "I never thought his behavior was that bad. You were the one who pushed this. You pressured me into filing that complaint, and now my reputation is suffering because of it. I regret ever getting involved." Her words felt like a physical blow. I had thought we were in this together, fighting for the same cause. But in the end, she chose self-preservation. She chose to make me the villain to save herself. Phoebe held on a little longer, but the distance between us grew every day. She stopped coming to my desk to chat. She'd make excuses for lunch. Finally, one afternoon, she said it. "You know, maybe we did misread things. Maybe we should have just left him alone. He has a right to his boundaries, I guess." She wouldn't even look me in the eye when she said it. And just like that, I was completely, utterly alone. The irony was so thick I could choke on it. I was now living the exact life I had accused Alistair of creating for us. I was the one eating lunch alone at my desk. I was the one being excluded from conversations. I was the one who felt like a ghost in my own office. The difference was, his isolation was a choice he made to protect himself. Mine was a punishment, a direct consequence of my own actions. I had fought against a perceived injustice, and in the process, I had become a pariah. The final, crushing blow came in the form of an all-staff email a month later. Subject: announcing departmental promotion. My eyes scanned the text, and my heart stopped. Alistair Vance was being promoted to a senior analyst position in a different department, effective immediately. HR framed it as a fantastic career development opportunity. But I knew what it really was. It was his reward. He had handled a difficult situation with professionalism, and now he was being moved away from the toxic presence that was me, Sloane, the troublemaker. He got validation and a career boost. Meanwhile, I had a formal reprimand from HR sitting in my employee file, a black mark that would follow me during every performance review, every application for a promotion. I was officially labeled as someone who couldn't handle professional relationships. My work, once a source of pride, began to suffer. How could I focus on ad campaigns and market analytics when I spent half my day replaying every single event, every conversation, wondering where it all went so wrong? My supervisor, who had once been my mentor, started making comments about my attitude and my declining productivity. The message was clear. My position at the company was no longer secure. I became the thing I hated most, a cautionary tale. I could almost hear the whispers from new hires. "See that woman over there, Sloane? Don't be like her. She got obsessed with a coworker, made a huge scene, and almost got fired for harassment." The worst part, the part that keeps me up at night, is the doubt. I still believe, deep down, that there was something fundamentally unfair about the way Alistair treated us. It was different. It was based on gender. But maybe my reaction was wrong. Maybe I let my personal feelings of rejection and anger cloud my professional judgment. Maybe I pushed too hard, documented too much, and turned a social problem into a war I was destined to lose. Should I have just accepted it? Should I have just let him keep his cold professional distance and gotten on with my life? At the time, it felt so personal, so discriminatory, that ignoring it felt like a betrayal of myself and of every woman in that office. Now, I'm living with the consequences of that choice every single day. I walk into an office full of people who either resent me or pity me. My friends are gone. My professional reputation is in tatters. Alistair continues to thrive, protected by his carefully constructed boundaries, which everyone now sees as reasonable and wise. And me? I'm stuck. I'm the villain of a story where I genuinely, truly believed I was the one fighting for what was right. And I honestly don't know if my career, or my belief in workplace justice, will ever recover from this mess.